Yeah. Myself and BT were talking some time back about how rich the community has become and how we can kind of uh, can do a better job of hearing experiences from everyone. Uh, we tend to hear a lot during WhatsApp chat, but it I think gets lost after the event, and we don't get a chance to go deep into individuals' experiences. So, motivated by that, we thought we'll start this Shades Trail Talk series. Um, the motivation is basically talk about various aspects which matters to the community, and we will try to keep it maybe once a month and see how it goes. Hopefully it's not too much of a time sink for others. um, so the first one is our distinguished speaker Sunaad. I think about Sunaad as a very kind of a very low key, old school ultra runner. You know, he just does epic things, and we don't talk too much about him. And Very lucky that we could schedule time for this discussion. Just a brief bio. If you've not seen Sunath's ultra sign up, you'd notice he has picked some really epic hundreds out there. Pretty much all hundreds are hard rock qualifiers, except for Scout 100. So we wanted to dig deep on how he goes about doing that. So brief bio is his first 100 was Cascades 100 miler. I think something in 27 hours, and then Big On 100, Bear 100, Wasatch, Scout 100, where we shared the trails. And three of us ended up with the DNF, and only Sunath finished that year. And then Western States 100 this year, another hot day, but he got it done in a really good time too. And he made it a double 100 this year. He did a Canadian 100 called Fatdog 120 with a really good time. So without embarrassing much, we'll go further into yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was, if you guys have noticed in Bay Area, you must be knowing Mark Tanaka, and he has an impeccable record. And I call Sunaad Indian Mark Tanaka, and I hope he stays that way. And he has a pretty high mark to achieve, but Mark Tanaka pretty much has almost, I think he doesn't have any DNFs over 200 plus ultras. Sunad has managed to keep it that way for all his epic adventures. So let's get started. Welcome, Sunad. Thanks for joining. So first thing we wanted to know was how do you pick a 100 miler for a year, and kind of what is your criteria? What motivates you to pick a mountain 100, and what's your thought process behind it?
First of all, thanks, Anil. That's a very generous introduction. I don't think I've done that many great things, but let's get started. So, 100 milers for me, I think it's a special distance, right? First of all, it. I feel like the training part of it takes training for 100 is always easy and is always interesting, not easy. Where it's a good mix of your performance is a good mix of just generally uh, mentally how far you're willing to go, as well as how well you're willing to train, right? Now, keeping all of that in mind, so that's one thing that sort of gets me going back to 100 milers year after year. And in terms of like the terrain itself, I like picking, you know, somewhat like cool mountain ranges that I've not been to, preferably with some element of like beauty and, going that offer good views, lots of single track trails. and preferably not very hot. Although I think like Wasatch and Scout and of course Western States is ends up challenging us in those ways, but you don't always get to pick the weather. But in terms of just like the terrain, definitely, like big mountains, uh, and like, yeah, good single track, preferably a single loop course is always something that attracts me, or a point to point race. You don't always get to pick that, but I try to do those. So that's why like Cascade Crest being my first 100 miler, that was definitely one thing that got me attracted to that course, right? Like if you look at the map, it's like the single beautiful loop, absolutely no out and backs, starts and ends in a beautiful little small town, right? Same with Bear, Wasatch. Well, I guess Western States is point to point too. So I would say they all share those kind of attributes.
Yeah. I mean, looking at your results, looking at the choices you made, it's you're not given to the temptation of picking so many other races. You kind of very consistent on what really matters to you. That's very obvious from that list. So now that you're signed up, right? Signing up is super easy. Signed up for 100, let's say 6 months down the road. Then what's your thought process on how do you get going? Do you work with a coach, or do you read a lot and figure things out on your own? Talk to other folks who have done that race, or read up on blogs. Kind of old school ways of doing things. So what's your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, I started off pretty old school, right? Like, I mean, this makes me feel old, but really, I think even until 2013, 2014, 2015, I don't seem to recollect that many running coaches, right? I don't know if Anil, you might feel differently, but I feel, Koo, David Roche, all those guys seem to have sort of gotten more and more popular, at least with, social media and all of that, only in the last couple of years. But no, so I don't work with any coaches. Um, maybe can I get better if I did work with one? I think so, absolutely. But a part of having this hobby specific to mine is I'm particular on doing it sort of my way, and having an element of freedom, fun, all of that, right? So I'm okay if I don't perform at a level that's like maximum to my potential. I'm okay performing maybe like whatever 5, 10, 15% less than that. But I like doing my own thing, right? Maybe that might change in the future, but for now I'm quite happy with where I am. So with respect to the training schedule itself, I think it's a pretty straightforward thing. I don't have a very strict weekly schedule. It's just like I have a loosely structured training block, I would say, right? So uh, if I'm sort of looking 6 months back, I think like the first few months are mostly just sort of building some sort of a base, staying healthy. It's usually early in the year, which means I would have gained 10, 15 pounds during my holiday season. So it's a lot of it is just sort of getting back into some shape the first couple months. After that is when I start really like building my mileage, right? So both in terms of mileage and intensity, I would say. Uh, uh, and that's when I would run maybe like 150K, 1 or 2 50Ks, or maybe a 50 miler. That would be like the in between the second 2 month phase. And then the final 2 month phase is typically I don't like having any races. I just like have like a good 6 week block where the mileage is peak or close to peak. And I'm that for me means about like 15, 16 hours of training, maybe about 80, 85 miles, depending on the terrain, right? For Western States, I compromise like the word for like getting in more runnable stuff. Whereas for something like Wasatch, I would be doing a lot more word kind of trails, right?
So the whole 6 weeks you're keeping at 80 miles a week, or you
Uh,
slowly building from 60 to 80?
Building, right? I would say like maybe, I mean, all of this also depends on staying healthy.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
not always easy, but I would say, yeah, between 75 to 85, right? So slowly building. And that means at that point I'm not doing as much intensity, but yeah, like I try to maintain as much as possible, uh, about 85 miles. So maybe like, yeah, I
So
think.
your mileage, Sunaad, is in general it's high, right? Yeah, about 80 miles you peak, and then do you also maintain some sort of strengthening routine? Because to keep that kind of mileage, probably you need some sort of strengthening going on. That's from my experience. But you are probably different. We want to know.
So during the peak season or like the peak training block, I don't do a whole lot of strengthening. I do a lot of stretching, mobility.
Right.
I use like the lacrosse ball and foam rollers, and maybe like for me, a deep tissue massage works pretty well. So every 2 to 3 weeks during the peak season, I get a deep tissue massage. Um, Also because training running is a lot of stress on the body already during the peak block. I can't potentially see myself adding more stress with lifting weights during the peak block, right? When I do weights is usually when my mileage is a little lower. That's when I can afford to spend more time with weights and weight training. But I do have like a standard 5 to 10 minute sort of warm up, um, all the glute activation stuff, nothing
Right.
fancy, but standard glute activation stuff, maybe some squats and uh, you know lunges and those kind of things that I do at least like maybe 3 or 4 times a week. This
Right.
is nothing serious. I would not call it strength or weight training, but it helps sort of uh, get me started with my run.
Makes sense. And how does the nutrition follow through the training program?
Eat as much as possible.
Ah,
uh, I think, I mean, if you were to look at it from a 6 month block perspective, right? The first couple months, I'm trying to lose weight. I mean, I do end up losing weight from like all the holiday season, right? Once I start running. But as I get closer to the race, I'm a little bit more concerned, especially when you see all of these, stress fractures and all of those kind of injuries. Last thing I want to do is basically try to lose an extra pound, you know, at the
right.
risk of all of this, right? So when it comes to when I get to like the peak blocks, I'm trying to eat as much as possible. I am a vegetarian, so like in terms of protein content, it's definitely on the lower side. Um, I mean, I don't try to over-index on it, but I do eat eggs, right? So I do increase my consumption of protein during like those final 6 week block. But I mean, to be honest, like I'm not as good as I should be with respect to nutrition, right? Like I eat a lot of unhealthy stuff. I eat all the standard Indian snacks as much as
Well,
I
we all
don't like
know
to.
you are a fan,
Yeah, but
you are a
why?
fan of beer, right? So do you drink beer during your training?
Yeah, absolutely. See,
Right.
I don't want to take the joy away from it. Like ultimately, if this is going to be something that I do for, decades, right? It also has to be something that's fun, right? Not only fun for me, but also for the people around me. Like, so I might like reduce the amount of alcohol, which I already have, but I do get a drink or two. Like there used to be a time, I think when I was when we were living in SF, maybe like I was still like 28, 29, where like Friday nights we would go to like drinking until 2 a.m. and then like 6 a.m. I would go up and do my 30-mile long run. I don't do that stuff anymore, so like it's definitely cut down on the alcohol, especially before a long run. But you want to keep it fun, right? It has to be casual as well, right? That's the only way it's going to be sustainable. So
Yeah, I think to some extent it varies from individual to individual too, because I think
absolutely.
some folks are a lot more sensitive towards retaining weight with beer, and they substitute with wine and stuff during the program, or once a week wine. Yeah, and there is banter around how beer can be a carbohydrate source as well. So I don't know how much truth is there.
I mean, research keeps changing from
Yeah.
source to source, from year to year, based
Right.
on, who is funding it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also your body is unique, right? Every person will
Exactly.
probably, behave differently towards it. Researchers take few people and, do the research on them. And you are not one of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I'm definitely not saying what I'm doing is
Yeah.
right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just doing what
That's what matters to you.
what
Yeah.
makes sense to me, what matters to me. Yeah.
Right. So with respect to pre-race, do you do course specific training, like as in course specific, as in, of course, what you take into account heat and verticals for a race, but do you kind of acclimatize for a high altitude race, or do you go to a course and recon, train on the course? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal life, I think that would be a preferred scenario, but so far that's not been the case for me. I mean, I do try, right? Like for Western states, I spent a week in Tahoe before the race. That's sort of what everybody advised. That's what I did. I'm not sure how useful that was, but for from a course specific from the specificity from a course perspective, I definitely do that. So for like Wasatch and even like Scout Mountain, I definitely tend to get in more vert and more technical terrain. Like I think Bay Area, we're just like so used to some of the smooth trails. Even if you look at Horsehaven on Mission Peak, for example, it's a lot of vert, but it's still fire roads, and especially on the downhill, it does not replicate what some of those Utah and Idaho trails have to offer, right? Like you train on those, and then you go to Utah, and like within 20 miles, you're sore, right?
Actually, a few years back, it wasn't like that. To some extent, you have to blame people on training on horsemen a lot, and then he's flattened it up. For past 2 years, he's been training only on horse seven, and just
Yeah.
pretty much screwed the whole thing.
I think these firefighters, right? They are trying to clean the roads up so that they can access people, because there are so many people hiking Mission Peak on a hot day. There are emergencies. They are trying
Yeah.
to clean up the roads so that they can drive up and things, right? I mean, on a serious note.
No, horse seven.
Even
Horse seven is not
Horseman
a fire
partly
road.
they can drive now, and quite a good amount of it.
There is
Yeah.
some
Like,
single track
yeah.
somewhere in between, right? Like there's
Yeah,
a
there are. Yeah, that section is the glory of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It also sees only like 1% of the power of the foot traffic that the main trail sees. So that's the other attraction towards going to Horsehaven.
Yeah. So other thing, do you see any value in shorter trail runs as a build-up towards your big run, like a 50K, 50-mile race?
Absolutely. I think we don't do enough of those. And actually, it can go both ways, right? So for me personally, I don't find too much value in doing too many longer in terms of like 50-mile to 100K races, because if you think about it from a training block design perspective, the moment you go to 50 milers and 100Ks, you need at least like 1 to 2 weeks of taper and 1 to 2 weeks of recovery, right? So then you're compromising 3 to 4 week training block for a single run. Whereas if you were to like design, use some shorter races, which is like 30 to 50Ks, I would say definitely there's a lot of value there, especially earlier in the season when you're focusing more on speed. There's definitely a lot of value in the kind of stimulus that a 30K or a 50K race adds. Lately, I've not been doing too many of those, but I think like definitely that's something that I should also sort of put back on my race calendar now that you mention it, right?
Cool. On that front, have you decided next year's race, or you're in the lottery or something?
I think we chatted briefly about it. So High Lonesome is definitely there on the lottery. So that's going to be in Jan. It's unlikely I'm going to get in. So then at that point, it's going to be either Bighorn or VAM. From a training schedule perspective, I think Bighorn is
Appealing.
looking more likely. And I also, to be honest, I love the location of Bighorn. It's middle of nowhere, Wyoming. Like the first time I went there, I was so amazed, right? Both like the airport, you're just like driving on random roads, going through countryside that you've never even sort of imagined, right? Like you've seen Yellowstone, it's really pretty, but like 2-3 hours from Yellowstone, it's still just as pretty, right?
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah. The whole of Wyoming and Montana, you don't need to do anything specific. Just drive on the highway. It's beautiful mountain range. Yeah.
And I think Nilo is running it. So one interesting thing about Bighorn was, I think in 2006 or 2007, this guy Speed Goat was leading the race, and he got chased by a moose.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up having to like jump behind a tree and like hide there for a few minutes until the moose left. So Nilo, that's something that it's a wild race.
He ended up a good 20 to 30 minutes, but in spite of that, he still won it.
Yeah.
The second guy was still 30-40 minutes behind him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun race. Like I would just, the vibe, everything is just so phenomenal. I would go back to Bighorn. Yeah.
Moose is
Awesome.
one animal that is been very scary. Like I've seen that in Scout, and it's just the enormity and the speed is just scary. Like it's scary than anything else.
Yeah. And they are known to attack humans more than, let's say, a bear does, right? Like a black bear does. So
yeah, moose is one of the most dangerous actually. Even in Alaska, they shoot right through the windshields of cars. Right, they just jump into it.
Yeah, the only backside of Bighorn, I'd say, is it starts at 10 a.m. and it's an out and back, right? So and there are two mountains essentially, and the second mountain is run entirely in the dark unless you're really, really fast. So you don't get to see like the one of the highlights of the race. Most of us don't get to see, right? So that's the only drawback. But otherwise, I'd go back to Bighorn.
Yeah. Cool. Now you're trained. Now you're kind of you're already at the race. You're thinking about you're at the pre-race briefing. How do you what's your thought process like? How do you go about executing on the race day in terms of pacing? What's your mindset like? How do you break your 100-miler? Do you kind of see it in parts?
I don't think anybody has figured out how to race a 100-miler. But
except maybe Carl.
Yeah.
His younger days.
Yeah, maybe Carl.
Carl Melzer, who had a famous quote saying 100 is not far. Something like
100
that.
miles is not that far. That's right.
Miles
so again, I think I made this point, right? So 100 milers are interesting. So what I've noticed is in most cases, like when I train well, I can pretty much extrapolate my training up to like 50 miles to 100K. But there's something that happens between like miles 60 to 80 that basically makes a 100-miler so different, right? Even if you look at the times, right? Even for the faster folks, you can never linearly extrapolate from 100K or a 50-miler to a 100-miler, right? Like in a trail 100 especially. So in terms of the pacing, I have a pretty good sort of feel to how things go for the first 40-50 miles at least, unless the weather is really hot, right? Like in that case, everything goes out of the window, right? So in those cases, so what I do is I ensure for the first 50 miles or the first 40 miles, I don't spend more than like a minute or two at any given aid station. So that way, what I start doing is, you know, I sort of mentally I prepare myself to say, okay, before getting to any aid station, like I'll for about like half a mile or so, I start thinking, I start looking in my pockets, seeing what I need to throw, what I need to fill, what I have, what I don't have. So that way, like even before a race, I know that the first 50 miles are going to be that way for the most part. And then, the last 20, 30 miles so far, I've not been able to nail like it's been interesting. I think that's the experience for which I go back to a 100-miler every single time. Like it's every race has been very different. Mentally, I've not always been able to like hold it together the way I would have liked to. Like there's always you cave in, you get to mile 75, maybe it's cold, maybe you're just feeling crappy, there's a chair, you want to sit down, right?
Yeah.
And you work so hard in the first half of the race to spend only like a minute or two in an aid station, and then like you find yourself sitting for 20 minutes. At that point, it doesn't matter what kind of intervals you've run, what kind of long runs you've run. If you're sitting in an aid station and not moving, right? Like you're
Especially if it has a nice fireplace and it's cold out there.
yeah. And interestingly, it's worked both ways for me, like well, Niloy pointed Bear. So I'll tell you, Bear 2016, I had the opposite effect. And like actually at Cascade Fest 2015, there's a beautiful fire. I got there at like 2 a.m. I sat there and I saw all these other runners miserable and complaining and just saying, oh, I'm just going to stay here until 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. until the sun comes up. And at that moment, I realized, okay, I don't want to be stuck with these guys. First of all, there's a whole lot of negativity. And secondly, the more you sit, the harder it gets to get up and leave. Mm-hmm. So I basically, like immediately within 30 seconds, I was out, right? So yeah, it's called the circle of depression. That's right.
Yeah.
It's called the famous circle, right? Like I think that's one thing that I try to do, but I'm not always successful. Like you go in with all these amazing goals in your head, right? And Niloy, I think you must have experienced that too, maybe at RDL, right? The first 50, 60 miles, you're so focused, but mentally it's just impossible. Like the last 30 miles, all running goals go out of your window. You just want to you just say, fuck it. I just want to like, okay, walking it in. And that's really sad. And I need to figure out a way to break that, right? I think with Western states, I was doing a decent job, although we ended up taking a bunch of additional breaks, but I've not always been able to do that, right? So
yeah. One rule of thumb I have learned the hard way is, especially in cold races, is in the dark, when you go to an aid station, don't look at people sitting by the fireplace.
Yeah.
It is a major sucker, and just do your thing at the aid station and get out of it. And once you're on the trail, you'll get into your rhythm. But the more you look at people comfortable, it just plays with your mind, and even couple of minutes turns into 20 minutes. 30
right. Yeah, I cannot agree more on that one. So I have never said there in my last 200. If you go to that circle, you are screwed.
Yeah, especially if you go to a circle of people who have decided on DNF,
right.
and they'll be talking about all kinds of stuff while they're DNFing. There's always another day, you can come back and fight.
The best part is they're always trying to like make it sound very logical.
Yeah.
It does not make sense.
It does not make sense. It actually does not make sense, But funnily, I don't know what it is. Like mentally, until today, I've never thought about a DNF during the race.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
I think that's one part of the mental training. I don't know if it's training, but that's something that I keep thinking about even while training, to know that you're going to get to the finish line no matter what.
Yeah.
And I remember So before my first 100, like I was basically listening to a bunch of these podcasts, right? I think, and back then there was only Trail Runner Nation and URP Ultra Runner podcast.
URP, yeah.
And actually, even they split from URP. There's an interesting gossip story there. But anyway, I think one of the things I heard on Trail Runner Nation was think of 100-miler as like going through a tunnel on a railway track. Don't expect to not get hit ever. At some point, it's going to get so hard that it's going to feel as if a train's coming straight through you, and you're going to fall flat on your face, and it's only a matter of time. Like, go in expecting that it's going to happen at some point of time, right? So that way, when that happens, you're no longer shocked. Instead, you're able to like recognize, okay, this is what has happened. Now, all I can do is basically eat and move forward at whatever pace your legs can do, right? Because a lot of us, sometimes when there's a mismatch between like the expectations and the day you're having, that's when that's when your race goes south really, really fast, right? But if you expect shit to hit the roof, that's when you're able to like just problem solve your way rather than sit in that circle around a fire,
expecting a smooth sailing the whole way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I've seen this for a lot of people, like when you say go crush it for 100 miles, nobody crushes 100. Go in expecting a really rough race, and then maybe you might be pleasantly surprised because maybe it's only like 80% of really rough of what you're expecting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing which helps is stay away from whiny people on the
Oh,
trail.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, move away as soon as possible. Either
they just
pass them or like go away, stay back.
They'll just pull themselves down and they'll pull you down as well. So just give a safe space between them, you and them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what? The other interesting aspect of hundreds is overnight running, right? So do you have any sleep issues? Do you do anything specific?
So I think there have been a couple races where I felt really horrible with respect to sleep. And I think that's mainly because, it was my fault, essentially, just like bad travel or like before the race or something related to that. I think for most like Friday or Friday races, you try to sleep well, like, Tuesday, Wednesday before the race. And there have been times when I ended up like flying in really late on a Wednesday and then, Thursday morning having to drive. And, those kind of things have led me to having sleep issues during a run.
Yeah.
But otherwise, thankfully, I've been lucky with that. And this was actually in Bear 100 2019, where, the 2 nights before a 100-miler, I ended up sleeping only like 4 to 5 hours. And then, sure enough, early morning, 80 miles in, I just decided, I've had it with the race because I'd finished it in 2016. So 2019, the motivation was to see like the full course and try to do well, but I just lost all that motivation with the lack of sleep. I asked for coffee at one of the aid stations. They gave me this really cold coffee. I just could not drink it. And then there's one more, it was like pouring. So I went inside a tent. They had coffee, they had a heater. So, and I just could not keep my eyes open. So I ended up like trying to sleep for an hour and then like gave up on it and then like walked it in, right? So it has happened. It's only a matter of time. But I've been lucky in most other cases where I've been able to like go through one night. But it'll be interesting, going into races like UTMB, which have like a 6 p.m. start. I think that's where sleep deprivation is going to get worse because you've been up the entire day already when you're starting at 6 p.m. and then you have to go through 2 more nights, right? Like, so I've not had that. So maybe like that's a good question for him. Next time.
Pradeep can explain how sleepy one can get.
Well, yeah, all you 200 milers, what were they thinking of?
No, that's Pradeep. no, Pradeep, UTMB, he fell asleep. So that's a good example, I guess.
Yeah.
So Any rough spots did you encounter in any of these races, like Wasatch? Really low spot when
Yeah,
you just wanted to get it done. I mean, get over at that time and just disappear. Maybe just
funnily,
did it happen?
funnily, the first 200 milers for me were the smoothest sailing uh, amongst all of them that I've run so far. And this is what has been intriguing for me, because I assumed that after my first two, I would like constantly get better. Instead, what I found is I just kept getting down. I just kept going downhill from there for the last 4 or 5 years. Not because I've gotten slower, but just in terms of rough patches and dealing with the rough patches. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be getting harder. Although maybe this year at Fatdog it was relatively better, but in terms of like specific moments, as I said, I think every race has had its times. For me personally, Wasatch, I think, is the toughest one, both like mentally and physically. Um, Wasatch, for those of you who don't know, I mean, people talk about heat for Western states, but to be honest, Wasatch, you hit 90s at 9,000 feet, and that hits you at a much different in a much different way than Western states, where you're at like 3,000 feet when it gets to like 100 degrees. And Wasatch is a much tougher race too. So yeah, like since mile 30, I'd had like some amount of nausea, and to a point where I could not like really eat any gel, and I barely had some liquids, right? And this continued for like maybe 6 to 7 hours, and I made it till 50. And this was like maybe at 10 in the night, at which point you have like a big climb going up to about 10,000 feet. And I was like almost dizzy. I could not eat anything, and I was like really nauseous, right? Like it was until my neck. And eventually I took, ginger ale, antacids, all of that stuff, and nothing helped, right? It just kept getting worse and worse. And then finally I got to this point, maybe around like mile 60. It's like an exposed ridge where I just sat by the side of the trail, puked, and I had to like just lie down for a bit. Right? And it was like below freezing. It was maybe 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was in a pretty rough stage. And by this point, uh, my crew was already like, I was like 2 hours behind what I told my crew, like just from, within one section of the race. And for those of you who know, like mile 67, you get to this Brighton Lodge, which is like a ski lodge, right? And so my crew had been waiting for like 2+ hours there, and they see me just like stumbling, walking in, and I was still nauseous. And then at that point, I still had like maybe 4 hours or so to the cutoffs, right? So it wasn't really that much of a concern. But I knew I could not carry on in that stage. Like the trails just kept getting harder after that. So I tried sleeping for a good hour and a half, but like I was just nauseous. I could not sleep. It was loud. There was a lot of light. Then finally, I just accepted that, that's how the race is going to be. And I took a couple of sandwiches in my hand. Like at that point, I realized suddenly that none of the sweet stuff was going in, but I could take like these micro bites of grilled cheese, and that was feeling okay. So pretty much like having spent 2+ hours at the lodge, I didn't want to get too close to the cutoffs. And that race, that's when I started, I still headed out, not feeling any better than I had been feeling for the last 10 hours. And in most of the races, you go through waves of highs and lows, but this race, it was just like a constant low. It never got better. Uh,
So how
I,
do you keep going? And when the lows last more than a couple hours.
Yeah, so as I said, like one of the, I don't know if it's a gift, I don't know what it is, but thankfully a DNF has never crossed my mind during a race. Like it's all about like what I need to do to get to the finish line.
Problem solved.
And it's yeah, you know, I try to move as much as what take what the day gives you, right? That's sort of the mantra I use. Accept the day for what it is, take what the day gives you, and just do your best, right? So eventually I did like shuffle along, and I took about 34 and a half hours, which is probably my slowest 100-miler till date. And the thing about Wasatch is you get the full second day heat as well, right? Because it's a 36-hour cutoff. You get the first full day, and the second day it's like a 4 p.m. deadline, right? So you're running through the second day heat as well. And so yeah, and it was just like a miserable race. So that's one race that I want to go back and make it right. I think, to be honest, Wasatch is right at this boundary where if it had any more word, like you see these days there are more and more of these races that have 40, 44, 48-hour cutoffs, whereas the most of the old school races, and this is one of the original 6 races, right? They have like a 36-hour as like the maximum cutoff, right? So for like the 25,000 feet of climbing, you still have only like 36 hours to complete. So I do think it's one of the tougher races to actually get done in the US. I'd love to go back to that one. And it's really cool. Like until 2 years back, they only had mail-in entries. Like you could not go get on to ultra sign up. They don't do any advertising. They wanted only people who really wanted to run the race to get in. So you had to like mail an application and all of that. Now I think they do have a
And
lot.
even now,
Like pretty much
they make you wait a good 4 to 6 weeks, I think. So to make sure that people who really want to kind of, committed to run that, they apply and they're not in a rush for instant.
Yeah, they are not in a rush. It's still, I think the RD is still the original RD, if I'm not wrong, Clyde. No, I think Clyde.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Like, and I mean, it's tough, but it's also extremely scenic. Some of the ridge running that you get to do in Wasatch is just incredible. Like after the first climb, so it starts off, it opens with some gentle rollers for a couple miles for the field to spread apart. And then there's a 4-mile, 4,800 foot climb. So you go straight from 4,700 feet to like 9,300 or something like that. So it's just like insane. So, but then once you get to 9,300, you can see the entire Wasatch mountain range all the way to the finish. It's incredible. And then you run along the ridge for 20 miles. It's just a stunning race. I love the vibe of the Utah courses. I'd go back to that one.
People,
sorry, long drawn answer. I think you just asked about rough patches.
No, this is perfect. Yeah. One more thing I want to know was you posted some really good mid-pack times. What I want to know is what's your kind of run and hiking style? Like do you run good portion of hills as well, or you mostly hike them, or depends on the gradient?
For 100 milers, I'm guessing, or are you talking?
Yeah, mainly
$100. No, it's mostly hiking on the uphills and jogging on the whatever, like more of a shuffle on the downhills. Typically, unless it's less than, let's say, 3 to 4%, I don't really run the uphills on the 100 milers. And most of these mountain hundreds also have like, bigger climbs going up to like 8,000, 9,000 feet. So it makes it harder to run the uphill. So I don't really run them. I do think for the 100 milers, the biggest aspect to finishing well is sort of hiking well in the second half. It has nothing to do with running, right? If you just look at the moving time versus stopping time for most people, instead of doing, I'll joke, but instead of doing interval workouts and trying to get 20 seconds per mile faster, you're better off trying to save, a few hours of stoppage time in the second half of your 100 milers, right? I think that's almost everybody, especially like the mid packers and the backpackers, I think there are so many hours to be saved in the second half of 100 miler. It's not even funny. And I think like that's where I try to uh, do as well as possible, right? Like at least what I try to control what I can control, right? And that would mean for the first 50 miles, 100K, try to be efficient through the aid stations and just keep moving, right? And then the last 30 miles, we'll see, right?
So
Whatever happens.
Sunaad, do you train to hike?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the specificity comes into play. So I do train. So like Wasatch, Scout, and stuff like that. I do try to do more hiking in my long runs, especially. So like if I run around like Mount Tam or even in Mission Peak, like a 30 miler will have about like 9,000, 10,000 feet of climbing. So there will be a lot of hiking, even in the long runs. The one thing I've found is even with the hiking, as I said, I feel like Bay Area hiking is very different from all this Utah,
Right.
Idaho type hiking. They're just different.
Yeah, it's easier.
Both, yeah, easier, more on the uphill, but definitely on the downhill, right? Like on the downhill, you can't, like the mental tax it takes on you is a lot, right? You're
Right.
constantly focusing, trying to jump between rocks. Those are the things that are hard, and so I do try to do them. Near Mount Tam, there are a bunch of these off unnamed trails
Right.
that have a little bit of like climbing and basically, yeah, shuffling, right? So I do
Yeah.
end up training on those.
Yeah, you're on for a rude shock when you see a course profile of most of these hundreds. You see at 90 you are all downhill to the finish, right? And then when you are at 90, and like this freaking next section is not as runnable as you were thinking. It's pretty much at Scout. It so happened that the difference between my uphill time and downhill time to hike Scout Mountain was just 20 minutes difference over
Yeah.
10 miles. so, so I didn't gain any time running down. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's not that smooth running.
Yeah.
So there are some questions along these lines. Basically, what are some good trails to train in Bay Area for all these technical trails? Where do you train? Apart
Oh,
from
technical
yeah.
trails. I mean, from a tech, and to be honest, technical trails, I think near Mount Tam, there are some pretty good ones.
Mhm.
A lot of stairs, rocks,
Yeah,
roots.
Dipsy is good. Yeah.
Yeah, Dipsy, and actually there are a whole bunch that
What's
are not
that?
as popular as Dipsy as well. I think when we had planned the Fat Ass 50K, I
The
I
cold plan
suggested the
or something like that,
Collier
right?
Springs is
Cold
good.
facts.
Collier Springs.
Collier.
Yeah, Collier Trail is good one.
Yeah.
And there are a
Collier.
couple more unnamed trails. There's one called Widowmaker, uh, which is awesome. That's a really tough one. That's not even a trail. Like you're just basically climbing up rocks and stuff. So there are some good trails there. And it's also nice because there are so many water fountains everywhere. So that way you can pretty much think of it as a race without having to like over carry super heavy.
Yeah. And some of the Sierras are just 2 to 3 hours away. It's worth the drive for
Yeah,
really long runs.
absolutely. If you can, Desolation Wilderness, and I mean,
Desolation,
BT,
yeah.
I'm sure like you can suggest as well. I mean, if you can, if you have the time to go and train, then definitely any of the within the Sierras, there are some
Right.
stunning
Yeah, you
hikes
named
and
it like, in the local is definitely Mount Ham. And of course, if you have the time to drive, Dissolution is the place. Lot of quality trails there.
yeah.
Yeah. Regarding the food, do you eat aid station food or do you carry your own food? And then what desi food do you prefer on the race?
So on the race, you guys will hate me for this, but I don't eat any desi food. Uh, um,
So there goes Kiran and Kaushik's race strategy.
No, I mean, nothing against it. It's just sometimes I've asked Varsha to like carry rasam or something, right? But veggie broth is usually what works, especially because some of these mountain hundreds are also like so far away. It's hard to carry any sort of Indian food.
Yeah.
With respect to the training, other nutrition, I usually plan to carry all the gels that I need, right, at all the dropbacks. So I don't like to be relying on aid station food if I can help it. But more often than not, especially in the second half of the race, I do end up eating a lot of aid station food, especially when it's like cold. And these aid stations have quesadillas, grilled cheese, hot broth, potatoes. I mean, I end up using all of that. And at some point, you can't have any more gels, right? So that's when I transition to that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're getting close to 1 hour. One section we wanted to get to is some unique aspect of the races you've done. So could you add like a short snippet of what's so unique about Cascades, Bigon, Bear, Wasatch, Scout, WS100, Fatdog? One of the reasons we kind of thought you'd be an interesting person to talk to now is it's a sign up time. People are deciding on the kind of races they want to do, and I think your suggestions will be much appreciated.
Oh, for suggestions, Bighorn and Bear are my favorites because there's no lottery. Same with Fatdog, actually. There's no lottery, so you can go and sign up. All three of them are incredible races. Lot of single track, scenic trails. Of course, right? Like when you sign up for these races, you don't know what kind of weather you're going to get. So there might be snow, heat, pretty much anything. And they're also in shoulder seasons, actually.
What's so unique about Cascade?
Oh, with Cascade, so Cascade Crest, I see Arnab on the call. The lottery seems to be getting harder these days, but with Cascade Crest, for me, it was just a stunning course. I still think one of the best single track sections that I've ever run is on Cascade Crest. Like we have 30 miles on uninterrupted on PCT, miles, I think 23 to 50 or something like that. It's just like this perfect 1 foot wide trail, soft pine needles on it, and towering evergreen trees on both sides. It's just like perfect. And then it also has, I mean, it's infamous for its cardiac needles, as they call it. There are these in the last 20 miles or so, like they have about 6 to 8 500 to 600 foot climbs, like steep climbs. But each of them offers like amazing vistas and again, like beautiful single track going from one to another. And from a course perspective, I think Cascade Crest, I know that Anil is also like a big fan. It's just like a perfect loop, right? It's almost, you can't find a fault with how perfectly designed it is. There's no repetitions, although I think like now they've added a small out and back to climb up to a peak. So it's like 3 miles longer, but otherwise it's like a beautiful loop and a lot of single track. There used to be this section called Trail from Hell, but I hear like they've cleared it up more and more as the years have progressed. On the elevation chart, if you look at it, there's like this 5 mile flat section and you would not know what it is. But once you get on it, it's like filled with stream crossings, just like fallen trees, lots of undulations. That's where there's this infamous log. It's called Tony's log, actually. So there's a narrow log that you need to step on and cross like this ditch. And maybe like a decade back, one of the runners, Tony, had fallen from the log into like a stream, maybe like 20 feet deep, and like hurt his head, right? So it's called Tony's log. And the year I ran it was like raining, so it was a scary moment crossing the log with like 70 miles on your legs. But I think like Cascade Crest overall is like a perfectly designed race. And, as much as we talk, one thing I'll say is we talk about mountain hundreds being tough and a lot of work, but in all of these hundreds, I would say there are at least like 40 miles that are really fast. If you've trained for it and not pushed yourself unnecessarily in the tougher sections, there are at least like 40 miles worth of trails that you can sort of cruise and do really well and make up a lot of time in all of these, whether it's Bighorn, Cascade Crest, Wasatch, all of them. But yeah.
Yeah, you already spoke a little bit about Wasatch. So what's so special about Bighorn?
Bighorn, what is special? Anil, you should tell me.
I know. It's the
yeah.
muddy section, right?
The muddy section is what it's infamous for. So Bighorn
You
has,
brought the weather, right? You brought the weather.
of course. But Bighorn are always, the thing with the Bighorn bear, all of that, they're either snowing or it's going to be incredibly hot. There's no, I've never seen it have fair weather, any of these races. Bighorn, the interesting thing is, if you look at the course profile, there are only like 3 hills. It's an out and back, right? You go 50 miles out, 50 miles back, and there are only 3 hills in total. But each of them are like 5,000 foot climbs, and they're just like long 10, 12, 13 mile climbs. And the views from the meadows are just incredible. I remember the first time I started running, you start in the canyons, you're like just going through a stream, and then you have like this massive climb, as I said, and then you go up. It's just like these beautiful meadows with like melting snow, and the entire mountainside is covered with wildflowers. It's all either yellow or like the lupine flowers. It's just mind blowing. I remember I could not like look anywhere else. I was like taking hundreds of photos in the first 20 miles, just like blown away by how beautiful it was. And yeah, as Anil mentioned, like because it's in mid-June, so there's still a lot of melting snow. And the top of the second climb, which is the close to the turnaround, there's about like 2 miles. And when you call of mud, and when you say mud, it's not slippery mud. Well, it is slippery, but it's actually at least a foot deep, and you're going to have at least a few instances where your socks where your feet come off your shoe, or it gets close to losing your shoe. So your shoe gets stuck in the mud, your foot comes off. It's a nightmare. And this happens middle of the night. It's well below freezing. It's about like 9,000 feet. And it's 2 miles. And so most people get fed up and they change their socks at the aid station. But what they don't realize is they have to go back through that mud. So it's a fun race. But all said and done, like it's just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And if bear is Bighorn is a kind of a spring beauty, bear seems to be like kind of the fall counterpart.
Absolutely.
Bighorn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and bear is unique because there are very few races that start in one state. Pretty much it starts in a town at the edge of the mountains. You cross an entire mountain range from the first climb to the last climb, and then end up in a different state, right? Like it's a really cool perspective, right? And what is nice with bear is it's also extremely crew friendly. There's like one highway, I think Highway 89 or so, and all the aid stations are pretty much like off the highway, right? So from a crewing perspective, it's a really easy one to crew, and if you want to have pacers, that too. And I've run it twice. Like the first time I ran it, it's called the Polar Bear Edition. So one thing to know about like Utah races, they don't cancel it no matter how bad the conditions are, or whether there's COVID, no COVID, nothing. Like they always have it, right? So the first year I ran it, it was an insane snowstorm. It started snowing pretty much at the start, and as we went up, it kept getting worse and worse through the day, to a point where we were running. It was scary, actually. We were running through the trails and it was covered in like icy water, and you're running 20 28, 30 hours through that. And at night, the other thing about Bear is they don't really market as well. I think now they got a lot of flack, and now they've been doing a better job marking the trails, but the trails are not necessarily that well marked. Like it's only at intersections, and you can go like a mile without seeing a marker. So like, so they made it an out and back because of the snow. You could not go all the way the first time I ran it. So it was interesting because I was really scared, to be honest. I was scared of how frozen my feet were and like how cold it was. So second time I wanted to go back to run the full course, and so that one was awesome. But again, it rained and it was like a nightmare. We had to like pretty much
You
like
did
ski
Bear
down
twice.
in mud. Huh?
You did Bear twice then, huh?
I've done Bear twice.
Oh.
But yeah, I wanted to go back. Yeah, I think like the sub 24 goal has been extremely elusive. Like I don't think like fitness wise I'm anywhere near there, but it's something that I'd love to do at some point in one of these mountain hundreds.
Yeah.
I'd go back to Bear sometime. It's also like the peak week of fall. Like it's just impeccable fall colors. Sometimes you're running through the single track just covered in red and yellow leaves. It's stunning.
Cool. So we already spoke a little bit about Wasatch. How about Scout 100?
You should tell me. Actually, we need to get Niloy to talk about Scout. I mean, I think he has a better perspective.
Nilay is a 3-time Scout 100 guy, so he can talk more about Scout. That's true.
Yeah, Scout is awesome. I think, I mean, Niloy, I'd love to hear your perspective, right? Like, it has everything that I like. It's one of those low-key races. You know, a bunch of folks just show up in the middle of nowhere. Like Pocatello is a tiny town. I'd not heard of it, to be honest, before Scout Mountain. You just go there. There's a random gathering that you see on the day of the race, and that's the race, right? Like that's what Scout is, and I really enjoyed the vibe there. Um, uh, I mean, again, right? Like big climbs. You go up to like beautiful meadows, a lot of spring flowers, and I was promised snow, but I never got snow on the year I ran. Right, like it was all melted with all the 100-degree temperatures that day. Again, Scout is tough, but it's still a lot of runnable sections. I think mentally, again, this was a tough course for me. It was the heat basically takes, or at least took the sting out of all of us, right? Hima, Niloy, Nilrao, all of us. Like within the first 20 miles, you're so beat up with all the big climbs and all that heat, that even after that there's a lot of runnable sections, but you need to be in a like mental and physical state to be able to do that. I was not able to, but yeah, I mean, I think you guys have better perspective on Scout than I do, so
No, I loved Scout and I loved Bear. I mean, your recommendations are absolutely spot on. And when you said that, I realized absolutely true that both these races have a significant runnable section.
yeah,
You need to really take it easy in the hills.
yeah,
And if you like become desperate when you start climbing Old Tom and say, oh, my race is done, then your race is really done. But
yeah,
after that, there is a good 30-40 mile of like runnable sections through the night.
yeah.
And
Actually,
then comes
miles
the big
20
ass
to
hills
60
again.
is
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think miles 20 to 60 were more or less, mostly runnable. There was good amount of hiking in between, but I think people were just so pushing so hard in the first 20 miles that, because the first 20 miles has what, like 8,000 feet of climbing, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So,
And the same thing, like the weather that you're talking about, is like I have never heard consistent weather in these races. That's the fun part.
yeah,
First year I went, I was absolutely a novice and I saw all snow, super scared, couldn't find trails, glissaded my way to finish. Second year, I expected snow and went in there with brutal heat.
yeah,
So you can't expect. I mean, you got to be prepared for everything. Mountain
yeah,
weather.
yeah,
Yeah, it's one thing common. I mean, I've not been to Bear, but even Bighorn and Scout, extremely low key. very close-knit bunch of volunteers helping out, and I just like the vibes of those races.
Absolutely.
Even
Yeah, I
Cascades.
think that's something. Yeah.
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 It's, I mean, one thing unique is you just do these hundreds for the fun of it. There's no one cheering you every 5 miles. There's no one shooting you, as in shooting, as in recording you kind of broadcasting your status every mile. I mean, one of the reasons I go into these races is to get away from this constant tech around you. So I feel good not having these things, but at the same time, as a spectator, I like races like UTMB, but as a runner, I like races like uh, Big On and Scout. Then you're totally cut off. No one can track you. You are just on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been sticking largely to those kind of races. I know UTMB is definitely something I want to do sometime in the future, but no rush. And that's
Yeah.
exactly for the reason that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, I think there is room for all kinds of races.
Yeah.
You just pick the one that appeals to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I seeing was, every race you picked up, it had some unique weather element playing out. So basically, there is something going on with Sunaad. Like whenever Sunaad shows up, something goes out of whack. What's the deal with it?
Let's just blame the mountains for that.
You want to be correct.
I mean, before signing up, guys, you need to check what Sunaad is running, and then sign up.
And don't go there.
That's the reason Anil asked me what race are you running this year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
But maybe
Well, but BT has taken over the baton for that, right? Like he's this time Stores weather probably beat all of us, right?
Yeah, weather was something.
Yeah, it's just a modest way of saying it was something. It got cancelled because of the weather, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but I was prepared this time. I learned from earlier mistakes in Bigfoot. So I was prepared so I could go into the snowstorm and finish. So that's it.
Yeah.
Note to self, get a good jacket.
Get a good jacket.
Cool. I think Western States, pretty much everyone knows about Western States, so maybe we can skip about that.
I have a thing to say about Western States.
Okay.
I had the privilege to pace this dude, and I must say he survived two things. I mean, first of all, let me put it this way: if Western States was not Western States, I don't imagine Sunaad running it. Right? I mean, it's got nothing in it except the fact that it is Western States. so
And it's hot.
That motivates me quite a bit. Yeah.
Although Anil didn't
run those
badass,
trails,
right? So
yeah, you have run those trails, you know that, right? I mean, there is an epic proportion and history and all of that, but I mean, you're not running through the Sierras, like really awesome views or something like that. But this dude ran through two things, through diarrhea and through COVID. He escaped COVID because I had it when I was running with him. And I saw that even after posting 60 odd miles, right, through Forest Hill, he does not walk. He runs the runnables. He is not walking anywhere. Right. And every time I see that motion, he is having diarrhea. He's having tough times, but he's constantly shuffling. So I always keep a clock to myself whenever I am doing this, except for the last 25 miles in RDL, to continue to shuffle wherever there is an opportunity. Because oftentimes it's just the mind that says, okay, let's hike this one. Like, Western States is a lot of runnable, and really the runnable terrain, you can absolutely shuffle.
Yeah. I think that's a key part of pacing, right? Especially if you think about pacing the first 20-30 miles, for every, if you push hard, maybe you save like 30 seconds a mile, a minute a mile. But then in the last 30-40 miles, if you're walking, you're going at 20 minutes per mile versus even a slow shuffle at like 12-13 minutes per mile, you're saving 7 minutes a mile there, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the math that I think we need to be like cognizant of while thinking about like how much effort we want to put in those first 20-30 miles. There is a lot to make up and there's a lot to lose in the last 30 miles or so of a race.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks a ton, Niloy, for pacing. It was a rough section. Yeah, well, it had been rough the entire way, but
Yeah.
it was good too.
So the last one, Fatdog 120. So what's so special about that race? I mean, I heard good things about it. It seems like a Cascades elder brother, elder sister. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I mean, Anil, you have run it too. Fatdog is awesome. I really like Fatdog. I think it's again one of those grassroots events, very low key. For one thing that maybe most people don't know is I realized all Canadian 100-milers have relay options. So
yeah,
most people they just come like a group of friends who come and spend the weekend just like running it as a relay and like partying at the end of it, right? So I thought that was a really cool thing to do, and I've not seen many US races have at least like the 100-mile races have relays.
Yeah.
But yeah, from just like the terrain perspective, Fatdog is awesome, right? Like again, it's a pretty standard thing. Like you climb up 4,000 feet, and then you're running through these beautiful meadows for a long time. Go back all the way down. You'll get an aid station, and then climb up again. And that repeats for like 4 or 5 times, right? Like that's the course. One thing that was interesting with Fatdog is how remote it was in terms of the aids. You know, the ones at the bottom of the mountains were all like well stocked, but many of the aid stations were basically hike-in aid stations. So, and you know, in temperatures like well below freezing, you would see basically there would be like one tent with like 2 people having a few gels and couple water bottles, and they'd be like bundled up in, you know, all your Arctic jacket, you know, big puffies and like snow jackets.
Wow.
Just like handing over gels and water bottles. That's it.
Did you
Like
get
those
any
were the
warm,
remote aid stations. Yeah.
Did you get any warm food on the ridges?
Not on the ridges. Well, on the ridges, they did have like the bouillon, like the veggie
Yeah.
broth. I did have a couple times. Actually, I did have it a few times. But the thing is, you know, if you stop on the ridges, you get really, really cold. And you can see the volunteers are struggling themselves. Like they've hiked in and, you know, they're just like trying to do their best, but there's not a whole lot to keep them warm and keep you warm while waiting for it. So we did get some broth or something and saw the aid stations up on top. But you know, like the well-stocked aid stations are only in the bottom, and that's where you get all the good food, right? Like I'm a big fan of pierogies. If you guys know, it's like dumplings, right? Like
Right.
you would get those in a bunch of aid stations, so that was great. But
at Cascades, one of the aid stations is famous for that, right?
exactly, yeah, mile
43 or so.
Yeah,
43,
yeah. But this one, a lot of the aid stations had it, but it's just some of them are so remote. But in terms of like terrain, it was just like stunning. And Anil, you know this, right? The final climb in Fatdog goes through this skyline trail, and it's like this narrow ridge with a lot of steep climbs, sketchy climbs. And to be honest, like the last this was maybe like 115 miles in, I knew there was about like a 5-mile, 3,000, 4,000 foot drop to the finish line. And we're at the summit, and I don't know where the trail is because there was no trail. I had to just like hop down rocks for like a few hundred feet and then like connect to a trail. And I mean, you're familiar with how
and then
steep and remote the skyline trail is. And you know, with 120 miles on your legs already, it can be pretty scary. And I got there like at 1 in the night. So, and there was like hardly anybody like the race is so far, spread apart at that point. It's spectacular. I think British Columbia is so beautiful. I'd love to go back and run VAM for that reason. But yeah, Fatdog had been on my radar for the last 5-6 years. They've been extremely unlucky with like forest fires, cancellations, COVID, all of that. So it was good to finally get a chance to do that. Yeah.
Cool. I think we are at 1 hour 20 minutes.
Do you have any questions in there that we need to answer, Anil?
There's one question. I think Pradeep asked. No, not Pradeep. Ashish. Okay. Can you share an example when you problem solved a physically painful situation and finished?
Oh, physically. I mean, all 100 miles are so physically painful.
And he has some diarrhea.
So if nothing's broken
Oh.
or bleeding, anything, Sunaad is going to finish it. So Ashish, to answer that. Yeah.
No, I mean, see, it hurts, right? It definitely hurts. One thing I've realized is when you start moving, if something is not, I mean, let's say 70 miles in, you're sitting and something starts hurting, it hurts way more when you get started. But like once you get into like some sort of a rhythm shuffling, it gets a little better, right? So that's one thing I try to do. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, diarrhea, of course, right? Like this is not much problem solving there. You just
Deal with it.
you try to OD as much on Imodium as possible. Beyond which, yeah, there's not a whole lot to do. I mean, you do sort of try to figure out like what are the things that are triggering. For me, it was any like sweet drink, any liquids pretty much was like just going straight down in a matter of minutes. So I was able to like basically cut down on all the electrolytes, gels, and just have some solids. But I mean, otherwise, I've been lucky to not have major injuries during the race itself, right? Other than some like IT band issues or things like that, where I've been able to like just stretch it out, rub, do some sort of self massage and carry on. So I think that's from a physical perspective, that's what it's been. Yeah.
Any other
So,
questions?
okay, I have one question for Sunaad, the last one, I think. So, how did your sauna training help you in your hot races?
So this is interesting, actually. So I think one of the things that's changed drastically for Western states in the last 2 years has been I think the sauna training research, and B, the amount of ice they've been carrying. And from what I understand, I think 2 years back, so Tokyo, before it got moved, people were expecting it to be like a hot, well, it was still a hot time of the year. So like both like, for triathlons, marathons, all the running, track and field stuff, it got really hot. So right before that, I think there were multiple studies that were conducted on heat training, and there's been some good research work on that, right? There's like a pretty standard 1-phase or a 2-phase protocol, and that's sort of what I followed as well for Western states. I followed the 2-phase protocol, which is basically, it's like a dense, pretty much go every day, 6 weeks out, and then you get into maintenance mode, and then like 2 weeks from the race, again, you start going every day until like Wednesday or Thursday, right? So it's a pretty like, it needs a lot of commitment, and you can see your body being able to like sustain more time and heat in the sauna, like as the days progress. From what I hear, like even like, if you go 3-4 days in a row, you start seeing the difference, right? Like that's the bare minimum that's needed, right? But you start seeing your body, like if you're tracking your heart rate or like your sweat within the sauna, you already start seeing how you're able to like bear more heat or more duration, right? And the second one is, of course, like the ice. For Western states, I don't know if you've seen like photos, but I was telling Anil, you get these Nathan handkerchiefs that have a zip basically, and you can put in like at least a few 2 to 3 pounds of ice. It gets really heavy, so around your neck, and that just like slowly drips over the course of like an hour and a half. So your body just has like cold water running through it the entire duration, to a point where you're not getting as hot as you would otherwise. So, and this is something even elites do, and I had it like all over the place. So I wore arm sleeves also, like just to put in more ice, because like your wrist and elbows are also like your sort of sensors, temperature sensors. I also wore like the naked belt, not because I wanted to like put stuff in, but I would just like shove the whole
Ice.
naked belt with ice. So, that'll also drip through like for my legs and stuff like that. So,
How much ice did the race carry? See, 50 pounds or something like that.
how much?
Runner, I think.
Oh, it was more. It was close to 100 pounds per runner.
Per
They had
runner.
something like 3,400 pounds of ice distributed over the
Per
course.
runner,
It
wow.
Per
was
runner,
insane. Yes. And if you see the finish rate this year, even though it was like a average
The
heat year,
conditions,
right?
yeah.
Like 100 degrees plus, the finisher rate was almost like 80%, which is unheard of, because until now, until 2 years back, it was always like 65%, no matter what.
Yes, people figured it out. Mhm.
Yeah. So A, they figured it out, and B, there was also a stat about like, I think 85% of the runners were running it for the first time, which means like States has become like this, once in a lifetime kind of an opportunity.
Right.
So people, are a lot more determined to finish it. And like if you look at the golden hour, you can see like people are motivated to get it done, and there's a
Right.
lot of support along the way, even for like the back of the packers to like push them along to get to the finish line.
Yeah. Cool. Anyone else? Any questions? I think this is exciting.
I think I bored people enough.
Yeah. No. This is
Thank you, Sunaad. It's
Not
very
at all.
interesting.
Not at all.
No.
Very
yeah.
interesting
This is
conversation. Yeah.
we can talk another 1 hour, but we didn't even dig deep into each of the races. But in the interest of time, yeah. Thank you, Sunaad. Thanks, folks, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd
Thank
like
you so
to
much for
keep
having
it
me. This was
going.
awesome. I
Yeah.
think this is a great idea, great initiative, both Anil and BT. I think we could all sort of greatly
Learn from
benefit
each other.
from
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has a story, uniqueness that we can learn from. So that's the idea.
Yeah.
Love this, man. Thanks, Sunaad.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank